Walking in the City explores the urban landscape of Manhattan from the 110th floor of the World Trade Center, focusing on the city's transformation into a texturology that combines extremes of ambition and degradation, as well as contrasts between past buildings and modern urban eruptions. The author questions the source of this pleasure in reading such a cosmos, questioning the origin of the erotics of knowledge that comes with seeing the whole. Certeau argues that the desire to see the city preceded the means of satisfying it, with medieval or Renaissance painters representing the city as seen in a perspective that no eye had yet enjoyed. This fiction already made the medieval spectator into a celestial eye, and the same scopic drive haunts users of architectural productions by materializing today's utopia that yesterday was only painted. The immense texturology spread out before one's eyes is nothing more than a representation, an optical artifact, and the analogue of the facsimile produced by space planners, urbanists, city planners, or cartographers. The panorama city is a theoretical visual simulacrum, whose condition of possibility is an oblivion and a misunderstanding of practices. The ordinary practitioners of the city live down below the thresholds at which visibility begins. They walk, making use of spaces that cannot be seen, and their knowledge of them is as blind as that of lovers in each other's arms. The networks of these moving, intersecting writings compose a manifold story that has neither author nor spectator, shaped out of fragments of trajectories and alterations of spaces. In relation to representations, it remains daily and indefinitely other. The everyday has a strangeness that does not surface, or whose surface is only its upper limit, outlining itself against the visible. Certeau aims to locate practices of space, foreign to the geometrical or geographical space of visual, panoptic, or theoretical constructions, referring to a specific form of operations, another spatiality, and an opaque and blind mobility characteristic of the bustling city. A migrational, or metaphorical, city slips into the clear text of the planned and readable city. The concept of the city has long been a central aspect of Western urban development, with the goal of managing the growth of human agglomeration or accumulation. Erasmus' perspective vision and prospective vision have transformed the urban fact into the concept of a city, which assumes that this fact can be dealt with as a unity determined by an urbanistic ratio. The city is defined by threefold operations: the production of its own space, the substitution of a know-when system for traditions, and the creation of a universal and anonymous subject, called the city itself. The city provides a way of conceiving and constructing space on the basis of a finite number of stable, isolatable, and interconnected properties. Administration is combined with a process of elimination, organized by speculative and classificatory operations, which differentiate and redistribute the parts and functions of the city. However, progress often produces effects contrary to its aims, such as the profit system generating a loss and turning production into expenditure. The functionalist organization, by privileging progress, i.e., time, causes the condition of its own possibility space itself to be forgotten, making space the blind spot in a scientific and political technology This is how the concept city functions, a place of transformations and appropriations, the object of various kinds of interference, but also a subject that is constantly enriched by new attributes. Today, urban life increasingly permits the re-emergence of the element that the urbanistic project excluded. The language of power is inherently urbanizing, but the city is left prey to contradictory movements that counterbalance and combine themselves outside the reach of panoptic power. The city becomes the dominant theme in political legends, but it is no longer a field of programmed and regulated operations. The decaying concept city may also be affecting urban populations, due to the illness afflicting both the rationality that founded it and its professionals. Cities are deteriorating along with the procedures that organize them, but it is important to be cautious. Ministers of knowledge have always assumed that the whole universe was threatened by the changes that affected their ideologies and positions. They transmute the misfortune of their theories into theories of misfortune, turning their bewilderment into catastrophes. One can analyze the microbe-like, singular and plural practices that an urbanistic system was supposed to administer or suppress, which have outlived its decay. These procedures have reinforced themselves in a proliferating illegitimacy, developing and insinuating themselves into networks of surveillance. These practices have formed everyday regulations and surreptitious creativities that are concealed by the frantic mechanisms and discourses of the observational organization. Foucault's analysis of the structures of power led him to move towards mechanisms and technical procedures capable of transforming a human multiplicity into a disciplinary society and managing deviances concerning apprenticeship, health, justice, the army, or work. These often minuscule ruses of discipline draw their efficacy from a relationship between procedures and the space they redistribute to make an operator out of it. Pedestrian movements form one of serial systems, whose existence in fact makes up the city. They are not localized but spatialized, and their fixations constitute procedures for forgetting. The trace left behind is substituted for the practice, exhibiting the voracious property that the geographical system has of being able to transform action into legibility, but in doing so, causing a way of being in the world to be forgotten. Walking rhetorics refer to the art of composing a path through turns and detours, similar to turns of phrase or stylistic figures. This art combines styles and uses, with style referring to an individual's fundamental way of being in the world, and use defining the social phenomenon through which a system of communication manifests itself. Both involve a way of operating, such as speaking, walking, etc. But style involves a peculiar processing of the symbolic, while use refers to elements of a code. In the city of Esfra, a friend's walking is controlled negatively by proper names, which are dispersed in constellations that hierarchize and semantically order the city's surface. These words, like Borgo, Bozaris, and Bougainville, slowly lose their value, but still have the ability to signify outlives their first definition. They serve as imaginary meeting points on itineraries, which may be recognized or not by passers by. These constellations of names provide traffic patterns and serve as stars directing itineraries. They link acts and footsteps, opening meanings and directions, and operate in the name of an emptying out and wearing away of their primary role. They become liberated spaces that can be occupied, and their rich indetermination gives them the function of articulating a second, poetic geography, on top of the geography of the literal, forbidden, or permitted meaning. Walking in cities is a form of escape from the mundane, and it serves as a substitute for the legends that once made space accessible. The stories and legends that haunt urban spaces are replaced by numbers, making the city a suspended symbolic order. This leads to the extermination of these legends, making the city a suspended symbolic order. Local legends allow for exits, ways of going out and coming back in, and thus habitable spaces. Physical moving about has the itinerant function of yesterday's or today's superstitions, and travel, like walking, serves as a substitute for the legends that used to open up space to something different. Travel ultimately produces a body of legends that is currently lacking in one's own vicinity, a fiction that has the double characteristic of being the effect of displacements and condensations. Stories about places are makeshift things composed with the world's debris, filled with heterogeneous and even contrary elements. Extra and other elements insert themselves into the accepted framework, the constructed order. The surface of this order is everywhere punched and torn open by ellipses, drifts, and leaks of meaning, making it a sieve order.